Are you a night owl in general, or is this getting towards bedtime?
You know what? I used to be more of a night owl, but recently I've become, I think since the lockdown, I've turned into a morning person, to be honest.
Yeah, same.
I hit the ground running. I make the most of the day and just have things done by the evening.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense,
you?
man. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I kind of same. I mean, I've always been a night owl, like ever since I was a kid, but with the pandemic, it's funny, right? Because I mean, we're all like for our jobs, we're used to, you have to stay up till 2, 3 in the morning, and then all of a sudden we didn't have to do that for a couple of years, and I feel like a lot of people started getting up a little earlier, going to bed a little earlier.
Yeah, I feel like a granddad nowadays. I'm in bed by 11 p.m., 12 a.m. latest, and I'm up at 6, 7 a.m. just getting shit done. So it's going to be interesting going back to, because we haven't really played any shows since the pandemic. We played 1 or 2, but one, sorry. But yeah, it's going to be interesting getting back into that whole 4 a.m. bedtime lifestyle again.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy, man. I mean, do you usually, what about writing music? Did you used to like stay up all night writing music, or were you writing during the day?
Surprisingly, I never really was a producer, like a nighttime producer, to be honest with you. I know, I sometimes a session would go over into early hours of the morning, but I tend to get a lot of my production done like throughout the day. Evening times, I used to just kind of use that time to relax or play games, whatever it is. Sometimes, because you can't really like tell when creativity is gonna click. But sometimes I might be like, oh, I'm going to bed, and then all of a sudden my brain kicks into gear and goes, oh, actually, no, you're not. But yeah, a lot of that was cool, a cool transition for me anyway, for going to sleep, because as I said, a lot of the reason why I wasn't sleeping was solely because of shows. And when you're doing shows for 7 years straight, your sleeping pattern just kind of sets, regardless of whether you're doing shows or not. So yes, as you said, it was a great reset during the pandemic. So it feels good to feel like a normal human being for once.
Yeah, Luke, what about you? Are you working during the daytime mostly?
Now I am, for sure, but I was the opposite. Like even like music wise, it would be a nighttime thing. You just keep going, and then you're kind of in a creative space, but kind of, I suppose, back then, that was when you did have space to kind of make music, because you weren't caught up in the day-to-day, like hustle and bustle. But more so now, just trying to get into more of a routine and start the day early and kind of just be a bit more like structured, creative-wise and also business-wise as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny idea, right? That I think everybody has to figure out at a certain point to do this professionally, is how to put your creativity on a schedule, right? That's like, it's like the gold or the holy grail, I think, of production and doing anything creative. Because with all of this, you wear so many hats, and you guys especially, I know, I mean, it's not just music, right? Like you're doing the fashion and events at a certain point. I don't know if you're still doing that, but there's been like a lot to it. How have you kind of learned to manage your time, I guess, is the question, over the years?
I think, as you rightly said, it's a skill that you kind of have to learn as a creative, to kind of understand, all right, this is not a 9 to 5 essentially, but it kind of is, but it's just 24/7. So you kind of have to find a way to be like, all right, you know what? When you're first starting out, the main thing that you're focusing on is just the creative part. It's the music, it's making music, and, maybe some socials, et cetera, et cetera. When you start getting further down into the line, you start looking at your finances, you're doing meetings, you're doing merch, you're doing, shows, you're doing music production, social media, flipping content. It's too much to just kind of be like, oh, I'm just going to do some stuff today. Yeah. So as you said, it's kind of like, just being like, all right, today I'm going to wake up, I'm going to start off the day by maybe mixing this song. Then I'm going to go into doing maybe this later on, and then kind of make sure that I'm in bed by this time, so that tomorrow, because I've got meetings at this time, you know what I'm saying? So it's interesting when it becomes, you start moving further into the music business side of things as opposed to just, music production. So yeah, I would say that over the years, kind of just trial and error and just kind of, figuring out, okay, this doesn't work, this does work. You're not always going to stick to the schedule that you may have set, but it's just nice to have kind of like a skeleton for the day to know, okay, this is what I'm doing. And then if things overrun or if things change, then it can, but you're not kind of like thinking, oh shit, what am I doing?
Do you guys like wearing a lot of different hats like that? The reason I'm asking is because there's that thing going around the internet of, these big artists complaining about their labels forcing them to make a bunch of TikTok. All that kind of thing, which, I guess I kind of see both sides of the argument that artists should be allowed to just be artists and to create and do whatever they want. But then at the same time, there's a certain reality we have to confront that in this day and age, being an artist maybe means something different than what it used to.
I think being an artist nowadays, making music, unfortunately, is like 20% of that. Which you would hope it would be a lot higher than that.
Yeah.
But, I guess you just got to kind of ask yourself as an artist what it is that you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to be on a major, then obviously what comes with being on a major at the end of the day. It's a numbers business. With us, as you said, we kind of wearing all of the different hats. We're kind of calling the shots, determining what it is that we want to do and trying to kind of like be adjacent to what's going on. So we understand, algorithms have changed, social media has changed, TikTok is king or queen, or whatever it is that you want to call it. It's very interesting. So we've been away for 4 years roughly. And just everything has changed in that short space of time. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of interesting to kind of just be like, all right, how do we utilize these things to benefit us and to push what it is that we're trying to do? But that's kind of like our goal. That's what we want to do. As I say, it just depends on, every artist is different. Every artist is going to have, a different marketing plan, a different social media plan, a different production plan. There's no two artists that's going to be the same. So it's kind of just finding out what works for you. Like I found recently that Facebook is actually one of our main social medias.
Oh, interesting.
But I was surprised by that because before that, we never really used to use it too tough.
Right.
So it's kind of like, you got to find out what it is that works for your brand and what works for your project, essentially.
Man, yeah, that's interesting. And, we'll talk about the whole like getting back together, getting the band back together, all of that. But it makes me wonder, talking about this, so often, especially on this podcast, I end up complaining about the state of, like social media and artists having to engage when they don't really want to and all that. But for you guys, I'm wondering if there's a positive aspect to kind of, like you said, going away for a bit, coming back, the landscape has changed a little bit. Is there anything going on right now? Any opportunities or just really any way that you're approaching this differently than maybe you did the first time around that's exciting, that's kind of fun, like opportunities, maybe things you couldn't do before that you can do now?
Good question. I think because from day one with Stööki Sound, we've always handled like our socials ourselves and stuff. We have put releases out with labels, but we've never been like signed. So we have always had that connection and also like learn the ropes with how to use the platforms ourselves to a certain degree. So I think that like coming back to it fresh, you're right, like the platforms have changed. TikTok didn't exist before. As Jamal said, Facebook is proven to be a great way to connect with people. I think that at the same time, it was nice to have a break because when you're consistently posting and like it can kind of become, I suppose you don't have a distance from it to kind of take some time away and look back and say, okay, the way we approach it now, I think it's more like structured in terms of like our content and also like how we want to engage with our fans rather than thinking, all right, it's 5 o'clock today, we got to post something.
Yeah.
Let's go through the gallery to find a picture,
Yeah. It's interesting because you were talking earlier about sort of structuring the rest of your life too, right? And the creativity part and putting everything on a schedule. And I think it's kind of cool to think about approaching the business side in the same way. Because I think a lot of artists, and especially aspiring artists who might be listening to this, it's hard at the start, or even once you're established, when you're kind of in the middle, like the eye of the storm, to really be able to plan far in advance and to feel like you know exactly what you're doing, as opposed to sort of just satisfying the day-to-day pressures of, I got to make this content, or I got to go play this show, so I only have an hour, so, this is all I have time for. But yeah, I think you're right, man. There's a huge value in really taking whether it's taking time off or whether it's taking time before you even jump in to really, dial in, like, what does it look like? What does it sound like? How is it presented? And it's, I don't know, at least for me, I find that such a weight off of my mind. I don't know if you guys feel the same, but.
Yeah, it's when we, as Luke said, we was kind of like in that social media trap for a long period of time. And I feel like social media is a whole different beast that's even worse than what it was, 4 years ago. I think that's obviously probably come from everyone being on it during the pandemic. I don't think you all, honestly, I think we're quite lucky because when we left, the pandemic literally happened maybe half a year after we left.
Right.
And then we were put in a time machine 2 years later, we're here now. 2-3 years later, we're here. So it's kind of like everyone was forced to have essentially to have a break in different ways. So I don't think on a normal, in a normal world, you have that opportunity to be able to, or that luxury to be able to take such a long break unless you become like a certain level of artist. And even then, nowadays, people are questioning it. But, like for us, we was afforded the time to really kind of go back to the drawing board, sit down and think. So as you said, for aspiring artists, I think, the main things that you want to kind of look at is what am I trying to do? How am I trying to do it? What do I want to look like? What do I want, the brand or the artist to kind of convey to the people? Who is it that I'm trying to talk to? There was a good interview that I saw from Pusha T not too long ago, actually, where he's, I'm paraphrasing, but he essentially said that I've essentially been making roughly the same song for the past 20 years,
right?
Because I'm talking to a specific audience and I know that's what they want. I'm not a massive Pusha T fan, not because I don't like him. I just don't really listen to him too tough. But there's people out there that do every single day. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like he knows who his fan base is. He knows who it is that he's talking to and who he's trying to get to. I think as an artist, it's very, very difficult to get out of that kind of thought process of the whole pie and not just a slice of the pie. Because when you're trying to get the whole pie, it's very rare that that's going to happen. I can name artists on my hand who've managed to do that. So you guys got to focus on what's my slice. And then if you want more slices, then you build from that first slice, essentially. But, you don't want to bite too much, bite off more than you can chew, essentially. So that's what we've kind of done. We've gone back and we've gone, all right, we already established ourselves to a certain level. We've already generated a fan base to a certain level, and there's some loyal supporters over the years. We've already generated quite a few streams online, so we're cool. We're not kind of like starting from the beginning. But when we do come back, how do we make sure that it's not just more of the same? It's not just, the same level of what we was doing. How do we make it bigger? How do we do more things? How do we get further? How do we, make better music, X, Y, and Z, just kind of make things better. So we went back to the drawing board on all aspects, whether that be merch, whether that be socials, rollout plans. We never really used to do rollouts too tough, obviously bar the normal stuff. But, we're very meticulous with what it is that we're trying to do now and kind of trying to stick to that so that, as you said, you don't get sucked up by the beast. Now, who knows? We'll see how it goes because, we're still learning and we're still in it at the moment. I'm not saying that things like TikTok, we've already seen, you can blow off TikTok overnight and your whole life has changed.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, you definitely, if you're a new artist or even if you're an old artist, you definitely do want to be utilizing all the tools that's afforded to you because at the end of the day, if it's beneficial, it's beneficial. But that's where obviously the argument comes in at the moment that I've seen online with, if you're being forced to do it, now it's a whole different level of conversation. So it's very interesting the way that the industry has gone, the way that people consume music, the way that people want to hear music is very interesting. How it's kind of developed.
Yeah, I completely agree. And maybe that's a good way to talk about the new music too, which by the time people see this or hear this, the new single is going to be out called Lost. And I got a chance to check it out and it's great. And I wanted to talk to you guys about kind of what you figured out about what you were saying as far as like, how do we reapproach? How do we not just sort of retread the same territory? Because listening to Lost, I mean, it absolutely sounds like you guys, but it also, I don't know, there's like kind of a lush quality to it that felt maybe a little less, I don't know, maybe a little less minimal or just a little more melodic. Like it did feel like kind of an evolution, but still recognizable as you guys. And, as far as that song goes and other things you have planned, where are you at musically these days?
I'll speak about it and then I'll let Luke chime in as well. I think everything that you just said is perfect. That's exactly what we wanted to achieve, essentially. So you hit the nail on the head. So I'm very glad that that's basically what you said out the gate. But yeah, as you said, it was kind of like, going back to what our roots were, because I think we kind of lost out ourselves. We got caught up in the music trap, no pun intended, of, what are other people doing and how are other people doing it? And we kind of lost our own roots, essentially. So we kind of said, all right, what's the kind of music and what's the kind of songs that we love? Welcome to London, flipping Lagoon, Ball So Hard, Uppers, those kind of things. Very, as you said, minimal, but very heavy, very hard hitting, very dark, very London, essentially. And how do we take that and now bring it into this era, and not only bring it into this era, but also keep the essence of what it was to begin with.
Yeah.
So, we're experimenting with a lot more sounds. This one, we kind of done it as an ode to the old Stööki Sound, because we don't want to just come out the gates with like new stuff. We kind of want to be like, all right, boom, this is what we still are. This is what we do. But then we're also going to develop that. We're going to show you different things that's still going to sound exactly like Stööki Sound, but you may not have expected Stööki Sound to have made it. And just kind of develop that sound, develop the core fan base, while also generating more fans alongside along the way. So it's very interesting to hear you speak of it exactly how you just spoke of it, because I think that's essentially the exact thing that
that's great, man. Yeah, I'm glad I'm on the same page. It's a great tune, man. But yeah, Luke, how about you as far as, evolution production wise?
Yeah, I completely agree with Jamal. Like, we kind of wanted to take it back to the essence of Stööki Sound, because I think going over the years, and especially like when we were on the road so much, I think towards the later end, we were kind of maybe more influenced by what was going on in the electronic scene at that time. We were playing a lot of like few festivals, but also kind of bigger shows, so that can kind of push you in a direction of making stuff that's like super hype. And but then I think we wanted to strip it back, and like when we played in Fabric in London earlier this year, we actually saw the crowd's reaction to like trap and stuff, and like it went off. So I think, music is circular, like things can come and go in terms of trends, but there is that love. I think it's the link to hip hop, really, and we bring in grime, dubstep, UK garage and stuff like that as well. So I think there is still like a core love for that rawness that we kind of bring in terms of our sound.
I mean, it's interesting talking about, the London influence on your sound, which at least to me is kind of one of the defining things when I think about your music, is that, I don't know if it's a minimal or this darkness, like it did not sound like it was being made in the US, especially like at the time when trap was like really popping off, like 2012, 2013, there was kind of this, I don't think we knew it at the time, but there was kind of this like US sound to a lot of it. And I think that's why your guys' music and a few other people stood out so much is, you know, the influence from London and all of that. I guess I don't know exactly where I'm going with this other than to maybe ask you, you know, did it take a while for London and the UK itself to catch on to what you were doing? Because to me, it's interesting. I almost felt like the US and maybe other markets caught on to what you were doing way faster than the UK, even though to me, your music was like so UK.
Honestly, I would say the UK still hasn't even really caught on.
Yeah.
It's kind of that weird one where, you know, we're too US for the UK, but we're too UK for the US at some point.
Yeah.
So luckily for us, you know, it's funny, like the places that we do well the most have always been Australia, US, Asia, parts of Europe, you know, Germany, we've done well, and a couple of other places. But London, UK is somewhere that we've still yet to crack. I guess that's, you know, we still got, you know, a lot of people over there who do like us, but a lot of the UK is very, you know, either rap focused, song focused, like indie bands, etc., or if we're talking electronic, it's drum and bass line, house music.
Yeah.
Those are like the main core sounds, essentially. So there was an era, or there was a time period where trap kind of was doing well in London, maybe, you know, 2013 to 2014, 2015. It was very short-lived. And so, you know, people who like us do listen to the sound are quite deprived of the sound in London. But it's still there. There's still people making it. It's just not as, you know, as much as over here. That's why you've got artists like, say, Ivy Lab and people like them who do well in the UK as well. But I feel like Ivy Lab, you know, they've got a very broad sound as well, and they make a lot more UK sounding things as well. So, and they put on events, very, very sick events as well, that out there as well.
Yeah.
But, you know, people like them, they're coming over here and doing very, very well and playing, you know, really large shows because, as you said, it's that kind of, it just sounds different. Maybe, as you said, I'm not sure if it's the darkness or not, because there's still people in the US that make dark music, so it can't really be that. It's just a different vibe, essentially, I guess, just from the influences of what we were brought up on.
I wonder if it's sort of the hybridization of a few different styles too. Mm-hmm. Like I was thinking as you were talking, I had Flux Pavilion on here a while back, and he was talking about a similar frustration with the UK and saying that like he can't really even play a lot of shows there anymore, and that he sort of feels abandoned by, you know, his home country a bit, and that he's frustrated with it. And he's another one where I think of, you know, he kind of defined his own sound. It's very identifiable. And it is kind of, you know, what he does is that hybrid between UK, kind of the roots dubstep of it, and then the, you know, the more aggressive US kind of thing. I wonder if there's something to that, because to me, like, the UK has always set the tone. Like, the UK is always the underground music from the UK is always the predictor of like what we're going to be doing in America a few years down the road. But then, I wonder if it is just that hybridization, that if there's not like a certain level of purity to it, you know what I mean? That the UK like can't get down. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think just adding to that, I think when we like kind of originally started playing sets and stuff, we were kind of blending like hip hop, sort of like early trap stuff, say around like Lex Luger, 3-6 Mafia, like some like ludicrous flips and stuff. But then as we mix that into like Benga or like Koki instrumentals, even people in the clubs in London, they might not necessarily have like known it or said like, you know, a lot of people said, like, I don't like trap, but then they would hear our set and be like, I like it. Like, what did you guys do type of thing? So I think it is just about, that's something we've always tried to do with our shows, is make it accessible to the audience, or show them something new, but show them it is like good music. It doesn't have to be like super well known or charting to be good, if you know what I mean. So I think that's probably why especially with us making so many instrumental tunes, maybe it hasn't had that like, say mass recognition, but I think that's why we have such a solid fan base of listeners that like what we do, because once they've discovered it, they're like, yeah, this is sick. Like, it's a hybrid. It does blend in all these different elements. And that's why they're down for us, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's like that Pusha T thing we were talking about a second ago, where I think you guys have done an amazing job over the years of really defining not just the sound, but like just the feel of the whole project, you know? So I think that's a very valuable thing you guys figured out maybe earlier than some, is, you know, just when people want that, they know exactly where to go, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's just to go off of what Luke said as well, you know, that's something that we kind of identified with the newer songs as well. And just being like, okay, back to what I said earlier about how do we make it grow? You know, a lot of our stuff, as Luke said, was very instrumental. We have more songs now. We have more singers. We have more rappers. We have different sounding kind of instrumentals. We try and make them a bit bigger. We try and make them a bit wider range, so that, you know, more people can be like, oh, I like this sound that these guys are doing, but it's still our sound, essentially. So those are all things, as you said, and that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier about what newer artists should be doing. You know, it's just an evolution, essentially, of the project of how do we go further and go forward with the people that that came with us to begin with. You don't necessarily want to just, you know, forget about them and go, okay, I'm going to the next sound now. I've already got you guys.
Right.
You want to go, no, look, guys, come with us. We're all going this way. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's essentially what we want to do from now until whenever it may be.
Yeah, I love that, man. Are you, Jamal, going to be rapping some more as well? Because I know you were on a few tracks back there.
So it's funny, the rap thing, I used to rap when I was younger. I would never really call myself a rapper. I can just know how to rap. It's never really interested me to be like, you know, a straight rapper, because I find it's a bit weird for me where, like, when I'm in my rap brain, I can't really produce. And when I'm in my producer brain, I can't really rap.
Oh, interesting.
In terms of writing stuff. Yeah. So I wrote a lot over COVID, because obviously I was just sitting down at home. So there are times, but when I first started rapping, it was mainly because we were struggling to get a lot of artists on our stuff. We'd be talking to people and then things wouldn't come into fruition. We got a few people here and there, and I was just like, you know what, I'll do it myself then. Yeah. So that was pretty much why. And then I kind of, you know, enjoyed writing again. So we do have a few tracks coming that have me on it. I don't really want to get too far into rap. I have like a side project for rap that I may end up doing or not. I don't know. I think I've written like 15 to 20 songs for it or something like that. Yeah, it's just mainly focusing on just kind of like, if I'm going to rap on our stuff, it's like an advertisement for other people to be like, yo, okay, I see what they mean. I see why rappers need to be on our stuff. And then we can build from there, essentially.
Yeah, I like that, man. Well, I mean, talking about, you know, hybridizing genres and mixing all these influences together, let me ask you guys, you know, early days, before maybe you even met up, before you started the project, like, what music was around you as kids? Do you have memories of like early things you heard that left a big impression on you?
Good question. I think super early, like my dad was in a lovers rock band,
okay,
like a family band, and that was kind of a big genre in the UK that sort of mixed like reggae, but also it was quite like soulful. So that definitely had a big impact on me earlier, and especially like seeing him play instruments and stuff like that. So when I first started producing, I would just be recording just WAV audio files of like loops, whether it be like guitar, drum machines and stuff. So that definitely got me into it. And then I think kind of like the uni days as well, I did start listening to a lot of like electro as well, like Simian Mobile Disco, and kind of that electronic sound. That was like my first clubbing experience. That was the first time I went to Fabric. So I think that kind of was another turning point for me in terms of seeing music performed in like a club setting and like enjoying that as like raving basically.
How old were you when you first went out to Fabric there?
I must have been like maybe 19 or something like that, or 20. So it was definitely like Freshers Week. So they just had a big program of events, and hearing that kind of like club music in that setting was like definitely a turning point for me to be like, that's something I want to do later on.
Had you thought about doing music professionally or doing music? Like, what part did music play in your life at that point?
At that point, it was a bit of a hobby because I was always split between music production, and then like graphic design and art. So I went to an art uni, CSM in London, Central St Martin's, but there's a big kind of like social scene there at the same time. So then I would go to the like midweek events and watch, like, that was around the time there was a lot of indie bands as well, like the Klaxons, like Block Party, Bowls, those kind of groups. And the old structure was like, you would see 3 bands play and then there'll be like a DJ for the last 2 hours. That was like the club format. And now it's changed a lot. It's more DJ heavy. But that was an inspiration to me as well, because a lot of those bands would be like looping on stage and kind of bringing in rave or electronic stuff into their songs.
Yeah, which is, I mean, again, they were doing their own hybrid sounds, right? Like, yeah, I think that's true. Why that whole movement was so exciting, was, you know, people from different scenes could everybody could connect to it. I mean, I do think back to like those Bloghouse days and all of that. That's part of why it was so exciting, was like, at least for me, was just all these people from different walks of life and different scenes, all of us, like the fans and the listeners, and myself as a fan and a listener, like all of a sudden it was like, oh, I've never seen like these crowds come together before. There was something really exciting about that.
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
So I assume you were like always a creative kid then, if you were doing graphic design and all of that. Was that just always you from a young age?
Pretty much. That's kind of how I just spent my spare time. It was either like drawing or creating something like visual, or then like making loops and beats and stuff like that. And then kind of starting Stööki was a perfect opportunity to merge that, fuse that in a hybrid way again. And kind of, I think that's always something I wanted to do from the start.
And the Stööki name was your sort of collective originally, right?
Yeah, that's right. So it was the co-founder of Stööki, Quincy. His nickname as a kid, which means to be, has that Jamaican heritage, to be like playful. So when we were working on the original Stööki concept of like screen printed T-shirts with pendants, he suggested it, and we were like, yeah, let's play with the spellings. Let's make 2 O's with the umlauts and create a brand like around the eyes and the face. So that's how it started.
And how old were you when that happened?
That was literally like as soon as I came out of uni. So maybe like 23, 24 in that summer. And it was like, okay, you know, had enough of uni. I definitely don't want to do anything more hypothetical. I just want to like get into the real world and start putting art out there to kind of get a real response. So it just happened organically. And
it was, basically like it wasn't just music, right? Like it was just a full arts collective. You were making stuff, you were designing stuff, all of that.
Yeah, so we worked like that as soon as we came out of uni, that whole year on a concept for our first collection called Make Your Mark. So it's just inspired by like mark making, and we were figuring out how to represent that through fashion. So T-shirts and jewelry, and then luckily Quincy knew someone who worked at Red Bull, so they ended up filming like a little docu-series on us and gave us their event space to do a launch event. So for that launch event, we had music, art and fashion, art installations where people could like there was like a UV constellation, a massive doodle t-shirt, had a live tattooist, the barber, and then we presented the collection alongside having music. So that's where we kind of always wanted to make sure how we presented our art was always like 360 and just combined like different art forms together.
And yeah, Jamal, I kind of went down a rabbit hole there for a second, but cool. for you, I want to know how you fit into this, or like when you start connecting with what Luke is talking about. I mean, for you, what kind of music was around you as a kid? What was really catching your ear?
So I grew up on reggae. My mom used to play a lot of reggae, even when I was in the womb. She said to me she used to play reggae to her stomach.
And this was in London for both you guys, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess it was always destined to be in music of some sort. But I started making music, when I was about 14 years old. Prior to that, I was interested in music. I used to listen to a lot of music. Around the time I was listening to a lot of rap, 50 Cent, that sort of stuff. I was listening to a lot of grime music. So that's what I mainly grew up on, UK grime, Wolfpack, Wiley, The Movement, the list goes on and on and on. Grime in its true form is essentially electronic music. You know what I'm saying? So The beats are electronic. They're all made using electronic sounds, but it's not electronic music. It's not classified. So a lot of the grime beats is what I grew up on. And then when I was about 14, I used to hang about on the streets when I was a kid. I wasn't really doing too much bad stuff, but I was around that kind of zone.
Yeah.
One of my friends was like, all right, Bob, look, here's F Fruity Loops free, start making music. And I was like, what is this essentially? And he was like, all right. So he showed me how to make beats. And just from then, I just became like, people just knew me as the guy who made music essentially, because that's all I did. I was just music. After, I think, how old was I? I think I was 19 when I met Luke. I was doing bits and bobs making music. I actually I started off in dubstep. Which a lot of people don't actually know, like proper old school dubstep.
Oh yeah.
And I used to go a lot of warehouse raves, underground raves, and the rest of it. And I had a YouTube channel as well where I was putting up all my dubstep remixes. And then it was only when I met Luke that we kind of was like, okay, as Luke said, when we first started out, we got together. We was playing a lot of like Southern hospitality type events in London, rap events, playing a lot of Lex Luger, a lot of, 3-6, a lot of the old school kind of things. And then for me, I think the turning point was I used to love Hudson Mohawk a lot, Seaback times.
Oh, yeah.
And I saw Tonight at Village Underground. I think that was their first show together. I can't remember if it actually was, but I know that was definitely the first show in London.
Oh, wow.
And when I heard what they were making, it just changed my whole life. Because I was just like, whatever it is they're doing, I got to do that. Like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what sound it is. I didn't know it was called trap at the time. I was just like, that is where I'm at. Because I was like, it's the same tempo as grime. It's got the heaviness as dubstep. It's like everything that I love. It's got the rap influence. It's just perfect. So when we made, a couple of remixes, and then we found out about Hoochie, that's how we ended up making Ball So Hard. And then we found out that there was a whole world of stuff, Flosstradamus, R.O. Grime, Gladiator. There were so many people at the time. And it was just interesting to kind of like open our eyes to a whole new world that was completely away from what we knew in London, because it just didn't exist in the UK at the time. So then, as you said, that's kind of why people over here were like, oh, wow, what is it that they're making? Because we didn't have any influence. We just made what we thought sounded good.
Right.
And it had a lot of the influence, as you said, of what we grew up on. And we kind of kept that even to this stage, you know what I'm saying? So then when I met Luke, as I said, we played those shows together. We made Ball So Hard. And then we basically was like, okay, boom, where do we go from here? What do we do now? Kind of thing, you know what I'm saying? Ball So Hard is going crazy. We're getting emails left, right, and center from all these.
Like a Gmail account.
Yeah, we had like a Gmail account.
Right.
We were pretending to be our own agents and our own managers.
Yeah.
It was crazy, man. And we just done whatever it is that we needed to do. And then we, ended up getting shows out here, but we didn't have visas. And then we found out about the industry and what needs to be done and all the crazy stuff that you don't, know about, the taxes, the business side of things, all this stuff that you just don't get told. There's no handbook. So it was very interesting the way that it happened, and it was a ride to say the least. Sorry.
Not having a team when all of that starts happening, it's a tough spot because you really do have to learn so much so fast. And you're exactly right that nobody's telling you how to do it or even really what you need to do. That's got to be wild, man. What was the US the first place you played outside of the UK?
No, it was Belgium, I think. Belgium.
Okay.
Yeah, Belgium.
What was, just out of curiosity, what was that show? Do you have memories from that?
Vaguely. I just remember it was an awful fee. I think it was like £150 or something like that. Right. And we were like, what? £150? This is crazy. And it was just kind of like, we just couldn't believe that we got a show in another country, essentially. And we went there and we played the show, and, trap was booming over there. So there was loads of people. And then from there, it was just kind of like, a lot of Europe was where we were playing in first. We missed a lot of the wave in the US. I think we came out to play the US first in like 2014.
Okay.
I want to say. So, that whole like 2-year, 3-year period where trap was really booming, we wasn't over here. So it was, testament to what it is that we've done from across the pond to be able to still keep up with what was going on over here when we wasn't over here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, which is interesting. I didn't even really realize that you guys didn't come to the US till, a year or two later, because I think in my mind, at least, the hype around what you were doing was so big that I guess I just assumed that, you guys were in the mix at the time. Because when I think back to those days, that whole scene, I mean, I was right in the middle of all of that. I was living in Chicago at the time, and, Floss was going crazy there. And there were, everybody was going crazy at the time. But that's wild. So how were you guys connecting with them or with anyone over here? Was it, SoundCloud, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it was all online.
Yeah.
It was a lot of love online. And I think back then there wasn't, for want of a better word, there wasn't so much noise online. So there's, everything was quiet. I think this was before streaming was really like a humongous thing like it is now. People were still buying songs on like iTunes and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of, it was, SoundCloud, we caught that, that real big wave on the SoundCloud, when it first kind of blew up. So everyone that was kind of on that wave, as you said, just went crazy because it was just like it's just like a hole in the bottom of the ship for the industry, essentially. And all the people that were just going through that hole, and then the industry found out and was like, whoa, what's going on down there, basically. But it was interesting. The way we actually got out here properly was actually Floss. They played a show in London, and we supported them. And they liked us so much that they ended up recommending us to their agent.
Okay.
And then that's how we managed to get out here. So
wait, where was that show? Was that at Coco?
XOYO.
Oh, it was at XOYO. Okay. I was at a different UK. I was wondering if it was the same one. I saw them when they were at Coco at some point. But
yeah. We played Coco with Dylan Francis.
Okay.
It was that's essentially how we got out here. But
so wait, sorry, I got excited and cut you off, I think. So you played the show with them, and what happened after that?
Yeah, literally, just we had a chat with them. We were just talking, and we were just like, yo, you guys are one of the influences for us. Thank you for essentially doing what you do. And they were like, yo, and we just kind of got to chopping it up after the show. Sat down and spoke to them for like 45 minutes, an hour. And we just told them our situation, we want to try and get out here. So they're like, we'll put in a good word. And a good word came into fruition. So we always respect them for doing so, because they didn't have to do that.
Yeah, that's great.
It was cool because I feel like there was a togetherness in the scene around that time. everyone was kind of like, oh, this person, oh yeah, let's back them. Oh, they're doing trouble, let's back them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There wasn't a competition.
Yeah, it felt like a community, man. You're right. Where and I don't know. I don't know if that community feel is still here in the same way, you know?
I feel like it's slowly rebuilding. You know, I can't speak for other genres, so I'm not sure what's going on in those. But, you know, with the newer artists that's coming up in this scene, I do feel as though there is like a togetherness rebuilding, where I see a lot of people kind of like backing each other and gassing each other up and all the rest of it. Because there's enough to go around, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
More than enough. So it's just kind of one of those ones where, as Luke said, you know, we come from collaboration. That's what we've always said. That's why a lot of our biggest songs are collabs, but not even just with the music, just alongside just everything. Do you know what I'm saying? If you want to make something great, you can't just sit in your room and lock in by yourself. Obviously, some people manage to do so, but you know, you really want to sit down with people and be like, all right, boom, I got this idea. Okay, I got this idea. Let's flesh it all out. Let's get it all together. Let's do this. Let's do that. And then put it all under one hub, essentially. That kind of like vibe is slowly starting to come back. I just guess, you know, because of COVID, a lot of artists, unfortunately, didn't make it through the storm or chose not to make it through the storm.
Yeah.
So a lot of people kind of were just like, all right, we're all in the same boat, because it didn't matter whether you was a new artist starting out or whether you was DJ Snake, you weren't playing the show. It didn't matter who you was. So it kind of just made everyone remember, oh, okay, we're all on this ship together, because when that ship sinks, we all sink. You know what I'm saying?
Amen. Yeah.
So I hope, you know, we're still kind of getting back in. So we're still seeing how things have changed and what's going on with shows, X, Y, and Z. So we'll be able to come back and report back later.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. Well, you're talking about, you know, being big collaborators and all of that. Another thing I wanted to ask you guys was sort of the dynamic between the two of you, and if, you know, when you two are working together, like, is there a process to it? Does one person usually handle one part of it? And has that changed over time, the way you work together?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely evolved like from the start, because as we kind of mentioned before, when we first started, where it was the sort of trial and error, I think for a long time we always felt like we were trying to catch up to the demand, or like how many people we had reached and the bookings, and trying to, like handle everything at that time, you know. So I think having the time off, like more recently, we've kind of thought more about how to structure things, as we kind of mentioned before, just so that we know we are covering things like music, merch, like the vision for Stööki Sound, like collectively, but using all the past experiences so we can sort of plan ahead rather than be playing catch up.
What does it look like these days when you guys work on music? Especially, you know, if you're not physically in the same place, like how does it start? Do you have a typical production process?
So recently what we've done is we basically said, okay, what is the kind of like area that we want to focus on? Because as Luke said, you know, before it was like we were doing everything. And, you know, I was kind of like doing music, shows, Luke was doing shows, music, merch, you know, business. It was just too much going on all over the place, basically. And then, as Luke said, you'll drop the ball on some things, and then you got to catch up on that. And then you got to try, oh, wait, we got to make music. Oh, we got to catch up on that. Oh, no, we forgot about, it was too much. So what we started doing now, you know, I said to Luke, okay, what is it that you like focusing on? Luke was like, okay, you know, as he said, he comes from a graphic design background, comes from merchandising. So Luke focuses a lot on the branding and the merchandising. I come from production. I don't really do merch and branding. I've got a bit of knowledge about it, but that's not my forte. So I focus more on the production. And then we come together and we say, okay, Luke will come to me and be like, all right, boom, this is what I've got. I say, okay, yeah, sick, that's cool. Maybe we should do this. And then Luke will say yes, or maybe he'll go, actually, no, I think why, da, da, da. And we just kind of do it like that now. So we have an actual structure of how we go about doing things. And then if we ever have any ideas, Luke might be like, oh, look, I came up with this idea, boom. Or I may be like, oh, I've got an idea for merch, boom. And then, but he is the merch guy and the branding. I'm the music guy, the music. So then essentially we kind of have creative freedom to be able to come back together and say, this is what we're doing as Stööki Sound. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Whereas before, as I said, it was just doing too much and you can't really focus and hone in on one thing. We kind of look at this more so now, you know, as like when you have like a business structure, you know, you're going to have, you know, different people doing different roles because they're very good at said role.
Yeah.
And that's how you kind of essentially, you know, make a business successful. So that's essentially the kind of model that we're doing now, but without kind of being like, all right, I have all power on one thing. I say this is how it goes. It's never going to be that. It's very much, okay, this is what I think. What do you think? Okay, yeah, cool, sick. And then we come together with our manager, with our team, and then we all say, yeah, boom, this is what's going on. It just feels a lot more collaborative in that part, you know, with regards to it's exciting to kind of be like, oh, I've got this to show the team, or Luke would be like, oh, I've got this to show the team, and then be like, okay, sick, and then you get that kind of validation from the team, like, yeah, we're doing the right thing. So I think, it's a lot less stressful. Let's put it that way.
Oh, I'm sure, man. No, that sounds great because then you can get excited about what everyone else is working on too, and everyone kind of pushes each other forward. Did you guys come to DJing or to production first?
I came to production and then DJing. I'm not sure about you.
Same for me, actually. Production, and then that was from young, like say so 13, 14. But then it wasn't until, as I said, like uni days, that's when I first went to my first sets and sort of saw like it was like, yeah, I definitely want to play my music out or just play sets in like club settings. So that was the order for me as well.
Yeah, I started producing when I was 14. I started DJing when I was 16. So there wasn't a massive difference between the two, but I had started DJing. The first things I started DJing on was actually drum and bass vinyls.
Oh, wow.
Because it was one of my friends who was a drum and bass DJ at the time. He was the one who taught me. And then I kind of moved over to a controller, and then I moved over to CDJs. Yeah, just kind of got a feel for the whole of DJing on a whole base.
I mean, that's jumping in the deep end, man. Drum and bass on vinyl is like, that's real DJing.
Drum and bass and jungle, in fact, I should say. Yeah. Jungle is crazy to me. I have so much respect for drum and bass and jungle DJs, especially say like someone like Andy C, who's doing like 3-4 decks at once.
Crazy, man.
It's ludicrous. If you know what you're actually doing, you know that's crazy. Like.
Yeah, it's so nuts, man. And he's one of the few. There's a few of those really technical DJs who I think have figured out how to translate it into the modern era. And I think Andy C, absolutely one of those. Like,
legend.
Absolute legend. Yeah, he was so influential to me as a DJ when I was a kid. I was spinning drum and bass vinyl too for many years, and it was man. He was crazy. Like over here, I don't know if you guys know Diesel Boy. Diesel Boy is like, he's like the US Andy C kind of. He's just like, been doing drum and bass since forever, highly technical, you know, like that kind of thing, and still doing it, still crushing it now. But yeah, I don't know. I think about like people like A-Track and a few others. I mean, you mentioned DJ Snake. It's crazy to me. Snake is still on turntables, like at these festivals, you know?
Snake is a legend. Like he's crazy. Production-wise, DJing-wise, he's just got it down. Like he knows what time it is. Like. And as you said, it's like a lot. I don't know if a lot of people know, like he comes from actual DJing. Same thing with, Uzi. There's quite a few people who are still technical goods on the decks, basically. Yeah. And one of my biggest influences was DJ EZ. I'm not sure if you know.
I'm a huge fan. I don't know how many people listening to this know, but if you don't know Easy, man, incredible. You got to search for the people listening who don't know. It's the letters EZ. Just search that. Look at some videos. It's fucking crazy, man.
Yeah, he for me personally, he's my favorite DJ in the world. Like just what he does on decks is just. I could wish to be able to do some of the stuff that he does in the decks, because it's not only the technical side of things; it's also the understanding of what the crowd wants at that particular moment.
Which is its own art form,
those two things
right?
together, it's its own art form, right? So yeah.
Man, how did you guys, that makes me wonder, how did you evolve as performers? You know, once you were really getting out there, I know you said you started DJing like hip hop events and all that, but you know, once Stööki Sound existed and you were getting this like deluge of people asking to book you, and all of a sudden you kind of have to figure out a performance, like what was that like? And how do you think you've evolved as performers on the live side of it?
When we first started, it was funny. We had a really weird setup. Luke was on one controller, I was on another.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'll connect them up and then kind of like just jump between both essentially. So we'll be like, oh, here's my headphones so you can mix in your stuff and then pass me back the headphones and then be the boom. So it was quite crazy how we used to do it. And then that's when we obviously came together and was like, okay, actually, maybe we should do this off of one laptop rather than two.
Right.
So then we came to that. Then I don't remember when, I think it was when My G's came out, is when we kind of moved to more towards like performance, just because we didn't want to just strictly DJ. We wanted to kind of create a performance of some sort that was a bit different to like what other people were doing. So it's very rare that you would see like a DJ start rapping, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then I kind of started moving more towards like being the front man. So I was on the mic and then Luke was DJing. So it evolved a lot over the years. I'm not sure how it's going to be now once we come back. We're still figuring that out. Yeah, I think, you know, we're always learning. We're always trying to evolve. We're always trying to make the show better. You know, we know that there's certain times or certain things that we've done we can look back on and be like, actually, that probably wasn't it. We know that there is things that we've done that did do well. We're always open to feedback. You know, I love hearing people come to us after shows and tell us, you know, oh, that was dope, or just tell us, no, that wasn't it.
Right.
You know, that's I actually much prefer it when people are honest and say, you know, I didn't like the show, or why didn't you like it? Because X, Y, and Z. Because now I can go back to the drawing board and be like, all right, we need to fix that. We need to rectify this, because we're essentially trying to put on a great performance for the people at the end of the day. So, you know, as an artist, you want to showcase your artistry in a certain way, and you also want to be able to make sure that people go home and they're like, that was it. That was the one. And that just comes with experience. That comes with time. That comes with a lot of effort and a lot of collaboration. Once again, just speaking to your team and like kind of being like, all right, this is the idea that I have. How do we flesh it out? How do we make it a reality? And then take it from there. So there's a lot of things that we didn't get to do when we was DJing before. You know, a lot of like set design, a lot of you know, the way that we want the shows to kind of go, the visuals, all of those sort of things. So it's kind of just like, you know, we have a lot of unfinished business essentially in this industry. So now we're coming back. We're like, yeah, we have like a kind of fire in our in our bellies of like, we need to get to this kind of point that we've always had in our heads, and we need to make it happen now, basically.
I mean, yeah, that's exciting, man. Like to hear you talk about it like that, because I definitely relate to a lot of what you're saying. And maybe that's a good way to talk about originally when you guys made the decision to go your separate ways too. Like what was going on at that time? Because we talked about how the music scene evolved and how the trap scene kind of, you know, started off, everyone was in the same place. A few years down the line, a lot of people were in a lot of different places and the music had changed a lot. Like where were your guys' heads at when you made the decision to step away, and then kind of what brought it back together?
I think we were just we were living in the US at that time. We were living in Vegas. We had like a residency there. We were kind of playing shows around the US here and there at the same time. But I think it was kind of a moment where it had kind of, I felt like, yeah, we sort of had moved away, say, from the essence, say, of Stööki Sound, and trying to kind of navigate through that whilst trying to tour, being in a different country for like solidly for a year was like kind of a point where it just felt like we had to kind of just stop things from there. And I think having that time was just a kind of natural, I feel like, evolution in a way, because even if you you know, there are other bands out there that might take 2 years out, write an album and come back, and that's just normal, or even longer. But because of the scene or the way we were in, like, you just can't, but you feel like you can't do that because of how it's structured. But I think the fact that we took the time out to say, all right, we're going to take a break, and then also like COVID happening as well, which was out of our control, it kind of just allowed us to have that opportunity to have some distance from it and actually, I think, take more of a mature approach to restarting things.
I think that's the key word there, the maturity aspect of things, because, you know, I started when I was 19. Luke started when he was about 23, 22. So he was quite relatively young when we got together, and we didn't have any break from each other for that whole entire time. So, you know, it essentially is like a long-term relationship, essentially, you know what I'm saying? And, you know, I saw Luke more than I saw my own mother. Like. So I think, you know, it gets to a point where just naturally, you know, you have friction, you fall out, you know, but we were always, you know, good friends at the end of the day. And we were just kind of like, look, we've reached a roadblock at this point where, as Luke said, there was so much going on around us, so many external influences, so many external voices, that what we had set out to do, we was going well away from it. It just needed to stop at that present moment, basically, because we didn't really know what else to essentially do. We could have tried, we could have done this, we could have done that, we could have done this, and it probably all would have ended up us ending regardless, but maybe in a different way. Do you know what I'm saying? So it just felt like that was like the moment for us to be like, all right, let's end it here. We've done what we needed to do. Well done. Cool. See you later. Keep stepping in it. But then, as Luke said, COVID happened. Now we had all the time in the world to digest everything that had happened, to really sit down with the experiences that we had, because we never even had time to really, you know, take in what we actually done, where we'd actually been, seen what we've seen, the things we've been through, you know, good and bad. And just kind of gain a much more deeper understanding of where was we at the time? As you said, why was it that it ended? How was it that it ended? And what can we do to stop that from happening again, essentially? And it was a much, much needed break from the project, you know, from that world. And then when we came together and we had another conversation towards the end of last year, you know, we sat down and that was basically like, all right, where are you in your life? Where am I in my life? What is it that you're setting out to do away from Stööki Sound, just in your life in general? And how can we bring Stööki Sound back so that it allows you to do so, essentially? Because, you know, I was looking at the numbers and we hadn't released anything since 2019 and we were still getting like 60,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. We were still getting people messaging us saying, we miss you, yada, yada, yada. And it was just interesting because I was like, you know, people still want to hear us. We didn't go out at a point where people didn't want to hear us anymore, or like we had fallen off or whatever. It was just kind of like, you know, people were just kind of like, yeah, we still want to hear you guys, essentially. Hope you're well. Hope you guys essentially bring it back one day. So it was always in the air, up in the air. And then, yeah, I think after the conversation that me and Luke had, we kind of aligned our goals, aligned our thought processes, and was just like, you know what, yeah, we think that we can do this again, but just in a whole different way now, just so that, you know, we're both not constantly stressed. We're not around people that we don't want to be around. There aren't voices in our heads that we don't want anymore. It's just kind of back to the core values of what it is that we're trying to do. We're going to find the people that believe in what it is that we're trying to do. We're going to give it to the people that believe in what it is that we're trying to do. And then we'll all have a good time and keep it stepping. So I think that's essentially what happened.
That's beautiful, man. I mean, I wonder, you know, if the pandemic hadn't happened, like, would it have gone the same way? You know, like it makes me think I don't know, the pandemic, there's so many bad stories and a lot of bad feelings from all of it, but it's nice to think that, you know, maybe something positive came out of it too.
I called it the Great Reset, not just for us, just for the world. You know what I'm saying? A lot of things happened. It opened people's eyes to a lot of things. Yeah. I won't get into like the deeper, darker parts
we
of it.
we can get in there, man. But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, it just opened people's eyes to a lot of things about themselves, about the world, about how things were going. You know, we was all kind of caught up in this reality that wasn't real, essentially. And then you know, when shit hits the fan, that's when you go, oh, this is reality. So it was kind of like we all collectively went, oh. And that was probably the first time since, you know, I don't even know, definitely in my existence that's ever happened.
Yeah.
So it was definitely something that I would say I came out the other side better. I know that's a privilege because unfortunately some people didn't make it through. Some people didn't come out the other side better. So that's not me boasting about it. But for me personally, right. I managed to, you know, just kind of learn more about myself and more about what I've done and just kind of, you know, just not be so hard on myself, essentially.
Yeah.
I think that's something very difficult for artists, is to not consistently judge yourself and consistently be a ton of bricks on yourself. You have to really believe in yourself for other people to believe in you at the same time. And if you don't and you lose that, when you now talk to people about things, that confidence is not going to be there. People aren't going to really be like, oh, okay, I understand what it is that you're trying to do. It's something that you have to kind of be like, this is it. This is what I'm doing.
Yeah. I think that even comes through the music too. Like, I think you can tell, like, you can listen to music from an artist who's maybe lost their way at a certain point. I think you can hear it if you know what to listen for.
For sure. So as you said, you know, when I'm listening to like maybe like the latter years of Stööki Sound's music career, you know, between maybe like 2016 to 2019, and then I'm listening to the stuff that we're making now, and I'm like, yeah, I can hear where it was that we started wavering from where we was trying to get to. So, you know, I feel like we're way back on track now, and that's why I'm excited again. I feel like I'm 19 again when we first started the project, because I'm like, all right, me and Luke were the two who kind of had the idea of what it is that we were trying to do. And for a vast majority of that time, it was just me and Luke. There was no one else involved. There was no agents. There was no managers. There was no, you know, whatever. So now we know what our core values is and who it is that we want to align with. So it's like the people who we are talking to, you know, they are the same kind of, they're in the same kind of headspace as us, i.e. yourself, you know what I'm saying? We're having this conversation here. We're bouncing off. It makes sense because that's the kind of energy that we're putting out into the world. So it seems like a lot of that energy is now being reciprocated. And you know, the people that we have involved in the project now, we feel like we've actually got a team, like a proper team, people who actually care about not only, you know, this is as I said, this is a results-driven business. It's all about the money at the end of the day. But not only that, just like the actual well-being of me and Luke, the actual health, aside from the music thing, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're still human beings at the end of the day. So there's a lot of things that just feels a lot different, and it just kind of spurs you on to want to do better and strive to get bigger and you know, develop, essentially, not only as a musician but also as a human being. So yeah,
it's beautiful, man. I mean, I hope, talking about you know, just the oh shit moment, the realization that I think a lot of people had in the pandemic, and hearing how it played out for you guys and all this positivity that's come out of it, man. I hope the electronic music scene has a similar moment, you know. That's because seeing it with you guys is a beautiful thing, and I'm super glad you're back, and the new music is great and all of that. And it's, for the scene too. This is something I harp on this podcast from time to time, but it's, you know, I think it was in a similar place. Like, I think it was not necessarily lost its way, but it was a lot of the same thing, and it didn't really feel like it was progressing at a certain point. And I think there is an energy for that now. I think there's a hunger for that now, from at least from the listeners. And I don't know. I've seen some changes in the industry. I've seen some things not really change as much as I would like. And man, talking to you guys, it's nice. It makes me a little hopeful. I hope we see more of this energy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for real, man. For real.
Yeah. I mean, this has been great, man. I really like talking to you guys. Is there anything else we haven't talked about? Anything else that's on your mind before we wrap it up?
Covered quite a lot, actually.
Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, like, you know, we got a whole bunch of stuff coming, if for the people that have gotten to the end, thank you for listening. For the people who maybe, don't know who we are, we're Stööki Sound from London town. That was our motto whenever we was on the mic.
I love it.
We got a lot of new music coming, merch, ideas, visions. If there's ever a time to like get involved, it's now, basically, because now the journey is kind of, we've done the work of trying to figure out who we are, and now we know who we are. So now it's time to show the rest of the world who we actually are, and this is how we want to actually go about doing it. So I'm excited. I'm confident. As I said, me and Luke have always had a great synergy when it comes to the project with regards to the creative side of things, where our goals align. So I think, when you've got good people around you, good things will happen. So it's interesting to see. As I said, it's Tuesday the 24th at the present moment, but by the time, as you said, this comes out, the first song would come out. I mean, just see what that's going to do, how it's going to be taken from the listeners, because at the end of the day, it's up to the listeners. We can say it's a banger. They might say it's not. I might think it's not a banger. They might say it is. Right. So you just never know, innit? So it's just kind of like, just trusting your ears, trusting your gut, and being like, all right, there you go. Let's go. And if you like it, you do. If you don't like it, let me know. That's fine. It's fine if you don't like things. I'm not one of them people that wants everyone to like us. Really, if you don't like us, that's entirely fine. There's millions of other artists for you to listen to. I don't like every single artist, so I don't expect everyone else to like every single artist. So yeah, it's just all about keeping our heads focused now and just looking straight at what the goal is. From me, thank you for chatting to us both. Thank you for affording us the time and also giving us a space to be able to just talk. We've never actually done something like this before, so it's very cool to do so.
Man, no, feeling is mutual, man. Yeah, it's like I said at the start, I'm surprised that we never actually met each other before, but it's a pleasure, man, having you guys on. You'll come back anytime, man. We can do a part 2, part 3, all of that. But,
for sure.
Well, I just have one last question. I ask this question at the end of each one of these interviews. Just looking for a memory from your life, a moment from your life. It could be from any time when in that moment, in that memory, music really deeply affected you, really had like a deep impact on you in that moment. And that's meant to be a super broad question. There's kind of no wrong answer. It's just the first thing you think of.
For some reason, I've been trying to think like further back to maybe, as you said, younger days. But for some reason, the thing that's just shouting and standing out at me right now was the back-to-back set that we done with Uzi in Seattle.
Okay, when was that?
That was 2018, I think it was. And I think that was I want to say it was like 18,000 people, 15,000 people. I'm not sure.
Oh, wow.
It was one of the biggest shows we've ever played, anyway. And I just remember standing on that table, just looking out and just thinking, rah. like we were playing, I took a picture not too long ago the other day where I walked past the first ever venue that we was meant to play, but we didn't actually get to play because the police came and locked it off.
Oh, wow.
But it was a place called the Macbeth. And I think that probably holds no more than 100 people if you're lucky on a good day. I don't know, maybe it was more, I can't remember. But it was just, to think of two, young boys from London kind of coming into a whole nother country and being able to play to such a large crowd of people. It was quite a sobering moment, essentially. And I still remember that feeling to this day of just being like, wow, like this is crazy.
Yeah.
And even some of my boys back home, they always make jokes about some of the stuff that I've done. It just doesn't make any sense. It's a feeling that I kind of like, I'm hungry to feel again, essentially, consistently. and just kind of like, you know, feel that moment again.
Yeah.
But I think, that's the one that kind of stands out.
That's a great one, man. I mean, that moment, that feeling, I know what you're talking about. It is one of those things that it's addictive, man. Like let alone just being sort of grateful and humbled that music could even take you to a place like that. But yeah, man, that feeling, there's nothing like it. It's one of those things that until you feel it, you could have someone describe it, but it's not the same thing, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Man, I love it. How about you, Luke?
I've been trying to like cut it down I got it down to two. One of them,
we can do two. Yeah.
One of them is definitely like Notting Hill Carnival in London, like hearing like the sound systems that for the first time and sort of like just self-built. You're looking at like Trojan Sound and a few other ones where they just kind of completely build it just for Carnival, seeing the parades, like, and the vibe from that. And I think that bass was like the hardest I ever heard, to be honest. And also in just like the good vibes that you get from it. So that's definitely one. And then the second one, kind of going back to that Belgium gig. So I remember something that we actually came on after Yellow Claw. And it was like, they literally just brought so much hype, and they had like 3 people in the group, hype man,
right?
Like smoke cannons, and then we played like back to back. And I remember the club, people were like behind us to the right, to the left. It was like a Lions Den, but we like played a good set, and just coming off that feeling like, felt like that let us know like we could take it to the levels that we ended up doing. Because that definitely stuck with me.
I remember they were going crazy. Yeah. I was like, how are we meant to go after these guys? I remember that. That was crazy.
Oh, that's so funny, man. And yeah, they've always been a little crazy like that too. I think they still have that energy to this day.
Yeah, they put on a great show.
They absolutely do. Well, and Luke, you mentioned the Notting Hill Carnival too. Just real quick before we get out of here, for people who might not know, can you talk about like what that is? Because I think in the US, like there's not really an equivalent event, you know?
Maybe New Orleans.
Yeah, that's true.
But so Carnival, it happens like every year. There's a 2-day thing, Sunday and Monday bank holiday. But I originally started with a lot of West Indian and Caribbean community that moved to Britain. They would just bring out sound systems into the street. There'd be like carnival parade, like food, and it's kind of like evolved over the years. But before there was no like restrictions, they would just run the whole weekend. Like my dad, and he used to go with his cousins. So and then over the years it's kept going, but it still kept the roots of kind of like dub, bass music, but also like soca, still band drums as well. Fused all the way up until like Mad Decent used to do parties there with Diplo. So it's great to see that it's standing the test of time, and it's a free event. So if you're ever in London, end of August, definitely come down to it.
I would love to go. I've never been, man. I've never been there when it's happening, but it looks incredible. I would love to, man. Yeah, absolutely. Well, shit. This was great, guys. Thank you for taking the time to do it. This was really fun.
Thanks for having us.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely, man. Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your day. This was awesome.
You too, man. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to the listeners as well.
Yeah, 100%, man. All right. Talk to you soon.
Love, later.
Peace out. Bye.